All praises. We back for another Shabbat class. First of all, I'd like to give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh. And we do so in the name of Yahweh Shai. On this Sabbath class, right, I got a couple of topics. One of the topics is the eclipse. A lot of people think the world finna end, right? The Passover coming up in a month or so, a little bit less than a month. So you got to get, not only physically ready, you got to start mentally preparing yourself, right? Start that preparation process of the Passover, right? So those my topics for today. Let's get into the eclipse first because it's quick, real quick, straight to the point, real quick and simple. So people walking up, they think the world finna end because of eclipse, right? And we ain't supposed to think like that as a nation of people. Us as being Israelites, we're not supposed to look up at the signs of heaven and take those as, signs that the world finna end. Give me Jeremiah 10:1. The book of Jeremiah, chapter 10 and verse 1. All right. Now, we use this chapter for to rebuke Christmas and to teach our people that they ain't supposed to keep that heathen custom. But we're finna look at the first two verses, right? So this is Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 1. It says, "Hear ye the word which the Lord Yahweh spake unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathens are dismayed at them." So you ain't supposed to be looking at the constellations in the sky and taking it as signs, right? That the world finna end. Now we know we see blood moons, and that's giving us, a roundabout time when to get our stuff together. But that doesn't mean that we looking at the sun, the moon, the stars as for signs for God to talk to us. That's not what's happening, and it's a reason for that, right? It's a very good reason for that because we're the nation of Israel, right? Our God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, what we know as Yahweh, right? Well, give me the book of actually, let me find the verse. I don't got it in my notes. I gotta find it. It just popped in my head. I thought I had it. Give me no, that's not it. Salaki. Yeah, Deuteronomy 4:19. Should have been in my notes, but it doesn't matter. Back to my point. There's a reason that we're not to Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 19. There's a reason that we're not supposed to do it, but the other nations, they can do it, right? And there's a reason. It's Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 19. It says, "Unless thou lift up thy eyes into the heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, and even all the host of heaven, should thou be driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God have divided unto all the nations under the whole heaven. But unto the Lord have taken you and brought you forth from the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto him a people of inheritance, and ye are this as ye are this day." So the Most High gave the sun, the moon, the stars, the constellations of the heaven. He gave that to the other nations for them to serve. That's given to the other nations. So when that eclipse come, a heathen's supposed to be dismayed. A heathen supposed to be scared. A heathen's supposed to be like, what's going on? And you ain't supposed to be on that time, right? You ain't supposed to be, because verse 20 said, "But the Lord Yahweh have taken you." So we were separated from everybody. That's what the word holy means, right? Separate. And then the Lord Yahweh have taken you and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, right? Out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be taken to be unto him a people of inheritance, as ye are this day. So we are separate from everybody. We don't get dismayed at the signs of heaven. What we do though? What do we do? Give me a 1 second. Give me a Matthew 24 and 36. The book of Matthew, chapter 24 and 36. And it reads, right? Red letter. But of that day and the hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but the Father only. Right? So nobody don't know that day but the Father. Yahweh don't know, the angels don't know, right? Only the Father, right? So ain't no blood moon finna come to tell you that the world finna end. That ain't how it work. You dig what I'm saying? I mean, eclipse will come that's finna tell you when the world finna end. That ain't how it work. You dig what I'm saying? Now get to what we do. Give me Ecclesiastes 12 and 13. This is what we do instead. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13. All right. But this is what we do. This is Ecclesiastes 12 and 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. So before the eclipse, during the eclipse, because I heard it last couple hours, and after the eclipse, guess what I'm going to be doing? Keeping the law, statutes, and commandments in the faith of Yahweh. That's what I'm going to be doing. That's my duty, right? So before, after the blood moon, I'm going to be keeping the commandments. So that's how that's going to work out, right? And I'm close the book on that subject. That eclipse is just that, an eclipse, right? And the Most High give that to the heathens. Let them know what time it is. We already know what time it is, right? So boom, that's that. Now, the next subject is the Passover, right? Now, the Passover we celebrate it on the 21st at sundown, right? The new moon is on the 7th at sundown. 14 days after that at even is the 21st at sundown, which is the Passover. So the first day of the first month, the first day of the first month of the year is the 7th of April. That's literally our New Year, right? But we already have a celebration, which is the new moon, right? But that's our New Year. 14 days later, you have our Passover, the 21st, right? April 21st, sundown. But before all that even happens, you have to do something. Now, before the Passover, you got to get all 11 up out your house, right? But even before you do that, you got to do something else before that. And that's the reason for the lesson today, right? Because you got to get mentally prepared for this, right? A lot of people don't know, but you can't keep the Passover. Somebody off mute. But you cannot keep the Passover if you have hate for one of your brothers or sisters. You have guile or hate in your heart. You can't keep the Passover, right? Like everybody muted up. So, but let's get to the verses, right? Give me 1 Corinthians 5 and 8. The book of 1 Corinthians 5 and 8, because you got to get the leaven up out your body first. Now, before you get the leaven up out your house, you got to get the leaven up out your body. You got to get the leaven up out your spirit, right? Got to get all that up out of you, right? It's 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse. Actually, go up a couple verses. Give me verse. Give me verse. I'm gonna start at verse 4. All right, this 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 4. In the name of our Lord Yahweh Hamashiach, that when ye are gathered together, and my spirit, and with the power of the Lord Yahweh Hamashiach, to deliver such as one to Satan for the destruction of the flesh. And we kind of all got to do that, right? This flesh got to be destroyed. But for what? That the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Yahushua, right? So when Yahushua come to do the judging, you trying to get saved. That flesh ain't gonna get saved though. The flesh gonna die. You better be the one to kill it. You don't want the Yahushua to kill it, right? But that spirit gets saved, right? Let's keep going. Verse 6. Your glory is not good. You know not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. So a little bit of leaven can leaven the whole lump. If you ever made bread, all you need is a little bit of yeast, and they used to spread and it'll leaven a whole loaf of bread. You dig what I'm saying? But that leaven is synonymous with sin or wickedness or hatred for your brother, right? Any of those things, a little bit can mess up the whole thing, right? So you got to get it all out, right? Just like you can't have a little bit of leaven in your house. You get all the leaven up out your house, but I like these cookies. I like these honey buns. I'm going to keep these. I'm going to hide them in the corner of the cabinet. No, okay, a little leaven the whole lump, right? But you're going to go in there and take a bite every day of the Passover, of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, right? So your body get treated the same way, right? Verse 7, verse 6 one more time. Your glory is not good. You know not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. Verse 7, purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump. Not your house may be a new lump, that you may be a new lump. So it's talking about purging out the leaven out of you, right? Purge therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. Even Christ our Passover is sacrificed for us. Verse 8. Therefore, let us keep the feast, not with the old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. Right. So if you got a art with one of your brothers or sisters, apologize to them. Right. You got a problem with anybody in your nation of people. It ain't necessarily got to be an Israelite. You know what I'm saying? Try to make amends with them. You dig what I'm saying? So you can celebrate this Passover in sincerity and truth, right? And that's the spirit behind keeping the Passover. We kept the Passover in the Old Testament, but Yahushua had to give us the understanding. You dig what I'm saying? Why we eat the lamb, why we eat the unleavened bread. The unleavened bread is synonymous with no sin. The lamb is Yahushua. The bitter herbs are for the pain and destruction and anguish that we went through in our slaveries. You dig what I'm saying? So everything has a meaning, but you got to get that leaven up out your spirit before this Passover comes, right? Or you can't celebrate it, right? Because you're gonna have to make it up or something, right? It's a makeup day. All right, give me the next verse. Give me Luke 12 and 1. Luke, the book of Luke, chapter 12 and verse 1. All right. It's the book of Luke, chapter 12, verse 1. It says, in the meantime, when they were gathered together, an innumerable multitude of people, insomuch that they trode one upon another, he began to say unto the disciples, first of all, beware ye of the leaven of the Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. Now we got leaven, right? Which is hypocrisy, which is still a sin, right? You can't be a hypocrite. You dig what I'm saying? Get the beam out your own eye first, right? But the point is that leaven is synonymous with something negative. It's not synonymous with something positive. That's why you got to get it out of you. You dig what I'm saying? Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, right? So you got to beware of this leaven. Even if you don't think you got it, you pray that the Most High reveal it to you if you do got it on you, because you got to get it out of you. If you've been talking down, talking bad on somebody, even if it's in your head, you dig what I'm saying? You got to get forgiven for that. You got to let that go. Straight up. All right, give me the book of Mark, chapter 8, verse 15. So you got to get the leaven up out your spirit, because hypocrisy is called leaven. Hypocrisy. So if you're a hypocrite, that's leaven. right? Book of Mark, chapter 8, verse 15. Chapter 8, verse 15. The water. This is the book of Mark, chapter 8, and verse 15. And he charged them, saying, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod. We know Herod was that Edomite, the king. He was in Yahushua spot when Yahushua was on earth. It wasn't Yahushua time yet. But beware the leaven of them. So we see leaven is in people. Leaven ain't only the bread that you eat and you say, hey, I can make regular leaven bread with the honey in it, or I can make some cinnamon. No, leaven, we're talking about something that's within people, right? And you got to get it out, just like you got to get it out your house. No leaven can be found during the Passover, right? All unleavened only, right? Give me Matthew 16 and 11. Actually, stop. Give me Deuteronomy 6 and 20. Hold on, no. Yeah, no. We doing right. Give me Matthew 16 and 11. So this is Matthew 16 and 11. It says, how is it that ye do not understand that I spake unto you concerning bread? Salaki, I spake not unto you. Like, let me start it over. This is Matthew 16 and 11. How is it that ye do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that ye shall beware the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees? As you see, it's repetitive, but the point is this leaven is synonymous with something negative in people. Give me the book of Psalms, chapter 61 and verse 17. 61 and 7. I got 17. Give me 61 and 7. About it. Nope, that doesn't. I wonder what. I hate just making. I should have wrote a note next to the verse. Salaki. But that's the point of the, because I got a bonus one that just popped into my head that I want to address kind of on the fly. It's a verse in the New Testament that Christians use to try to cut Israelites. And I just want you to be aware of it. If you come across a Christian and they hit you with this, I want you to know how to hit them back, right? Dodge the jab. You know what I'm saying? I want you to do a counter hook, right? So that's what we finna do. Give me the book of Romans chapter 10, verse 4. So we ended the eclipse and we ended the Passover. Get that leaven about your spirit. Now I want to show y'all a verse that Christians use. All right. This is the book of Romans chapter 10 and verse 4. And it says, for Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believe. And they're going to look at you and say, see, we ain't got to keep no law. That's what they're going to do. Scroll up like 2 verses. Okay, so boom. Okay, so verse 3. For they being ignorant of God's righteousness, so we got to find out what God's righteousness actually is. But for they being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness. So you got God righteousness, and then you got people establishing their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves to the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth, right? For Moses describeth, this is a cut, for Moses describeth the righteousness which is of the law, that one man which doeth those things shall live by them. But the righteousness which is of faith speaketh on this wise. So the righteousness of faith is like this, right? Say not in thy heart, who shall ascend up to heaven? That is, to bring Christ down from above. Or should descend unto the deep, that is, to bring up Christ again from the dead. Verse 8. But what saith it? The word is nigh thee, is near thee, even in thy mouth, in thy heart, which that is the word of faith, which we preach, that if ye shall confess in thy mouth that the Lord Yahweh shall Mashiach, and shall believe in thy heart that God have raised him up from the dead, thou shalt be saved. So they gonna look at you and say, you don't understand the gospel. You don't have to keep the law. Christ is the end of the law for all that believe. Now, let me. I'm going to go ahead and cut up the whole, because first of all, Paul is quoting something a lot, and they don't know that. They think Paul just came up with this by himself, and he came up with a new revelation. You haven't read Paul Romans chapter 10, so you don't understand. No, Paul is quoting something from the law. Paul is quoting. That's what he's quoting. This whole passage comes from the Torah, the same Torah they tell him not to keep. But let's focus on verse 4, because my understanding is, which is most of the camp's understanding, is Christ is the end of the law, because he came at the end of the law. But does this say Christ came to end the law? Let's read it. It says Romans 10:4, for Christ is the end of the law of righteousness for everyone that believeth. It did not say, for Christ ended the law for righteousness to everyone that believeth. It didn't say that. So it doesn't say Christ ended it. It says he's at the end, right? Just like if you at the end of a line, don't mean the line don't exist, right? So when you go through Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy is the last book of the Torah. And where does Christ get mentioned? In Deuteronomy 18:18, Deuteronomy 30. Actually, Deuteronomy 30 is where this is quoted from. Now, let me get it back. It says, keep in mind, y'all, remember this verse. It says, for Moses describeth the righteousness of the law. So it already gave you a hint where this quote is coming from. It's coming from Moses, right? And Moses described the righteousness of the law, which is the righteousness of God. You don't want to try to establish your own righteousness. You want to get with the righteousness of God, right? It says, verse 5, for Moses describeth the righteousness of the law, that is of the law, that one man, with that the man which doeth these things shall live by them. But the righteousness which is of faith speaketh on this wise. Now listen, remember this part. Say not in thy heart, who shall ascend up to heaven? That is to bring Christ down from above. Or who shall descend into the deep? That is to bring Christ again from the dead. But what it saith it? The word is nigh thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart. That is the word of faith, which is preached. Give me Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse, I believe like 12. One second, let me get this package. Salakia. All right, back to the regularly scheduled program. Deuteronomy chapter 3. Scroll up like 2 verses. Let me make sure I start at the right verse. Actually, give me verse 9. Let me see verse 9. I'm trying to start at verse 10. All right, so remember what Romans 10, we started at 3 and read down, but remember what Romans 10 said. And remember I said it was a quote. Pay attention. This is Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 10. It says, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, Yahweh, to keep his commandments and his statutes which are written in the book of the law. Actually, let me get one more verse first. Give me Deuteronomy 25. Give me Deuteronomy 6 and 25. Then I'm finna get the quote. Because let's get the righteousness. What is the righteousness of God? All right. Let's get it out the book. This Deuteronomy 6 and 25. It says, and it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before the Lord Yahweh our God as he hath commanded us. So that's our righteousness. We supposed to do that in the front of the nation. So all of them can be like, that is I forget, I don't want to butcher the verse, but everybody, all the other nations gonna be looking up to us as all, looking up to us if we keep these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? That's our righteousness. Now give me Deuteronomy chapter 30, starting at verse 10. Because you remember, if you do them, you shall live, right? Boom. This is Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 10. And if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord, Yahweh thy God, and to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in the book of the law, and if thou turn unto the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul. Verse 11. For the commandment which I command thee this day is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. Remember in Romans it said it is nigh. It ain't far, right? It's near to thee, right? Verse 12. It is not in heaven that thou shouldst say, who shall go up to for us to heaven? So it ain't all of you said, who shall ascend up into heaven and bring it down with Christ? This the same thing. Verse 12. It is not in heaven that thou shouldest say, who shall go up for us into heaven and bring it to us that we may hear it and do it. So it ain't up in heaven. It's near you. It ain't far away. It ain't up in heaven that somebody got to go get it for you. Verse 13. Neither is it beyond the sea. You remember? Neither is it beyond the deep. Saying somebody got to go up from the dead to bring it up to Christ, right? Verse 13. Neither is it beyond the sea that thou shalt sayest, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it? But the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth, in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. And see, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil. In that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in all the ways, and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply, and the Lord thy God shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess. Right? So boom, go back to Romans chapter 10 and verse 4. Listen, exact quote. It's talking about Yahweh Shai, but the righteousness you're supposed to be keeping is the law of God, right? So it's quite the contrary. It's not teaching you to not keep the law. It's actually teaching you to keep the law, right? And Christ is at the end of that law. I just showed you Christ in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy 30. That's what it's talking about, right? You go to Deuteronomy 18 and 18, it tells you that Christ's going to raise somebody from our brethren, and we got to listen to him. And whoever don't listen to him, God going to require it of him. That's in Deuteronomy. That's the last book of the Torah. He's at the end of the law, right? So, but check it out. It says, verse 7, who shall descend, verse 6, the righteousness of faith speaketh on this wise, say not in thy heart, who shall ascend up to heaven? Verse 7, or who shall ascend into the deep? But because what's in parentheses is added, that's not in the original text. Verse 8, but what saith it? The word is nigh thee, even in thy mouth, in thy heart, that is the word of faith which thou preach. This is an exact quote that's telling you to keep the law. Now that's how you're supposed to break it down, right? Now give me Psalms 119 and 142. The book of Psalms, chapter 119 and verse 142. Check this out. The Psalms 119 and 142. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness. No. It's up until Paul. No, the Most High righteousness is an everlasting righteousness. Thy law is the truth. See, that's what we stand up on. We ain't finna get this misconstrued or none of that. Give me the book of Revelations, chapter 14, verse 12. We ain't finna play with it, all right? Because they will use Paul, and Paul said a sentence, a word kind of way, they'll create a whole doctrine out of it. This Revelation chapter 14, verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Yahweh Shah Hamashiach. So you got to have the faith, and you got to keep the commandments from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. Now go to Deuteronomy 28, and I'm going to close it out. Give me Deuteronomy 28. I want verse 1 and then verse 15, because this is wild how they explain the Bible and how they use Paul to go against Christ and Christ and the Most High, the Lord in Christ, right? So this Deuteronomy 28 and 1. And it shall come to pass that if thou shalt hearken diligently, because we always read verse 15, we skip over the blessings, but let's read it. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. And all the blessings shall come upon thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God. Right? Give me verse 15. This Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou shalt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Right? So I read that because actually me and my wife, we was laying in the bed. I'm laying in the bed with her, and I was talking about this exact point, right? Because these Christians, or some Christian Israelites, they call themselves Israelites, but they in Christianity, that tells you not to keep the law, they're essentially going back to Deuteronomy and telling you, Deuteronomy 1 and 1 say, if you keep the laws, you will be blessed. And Deuteronomy 15 says, if you don't keep the laws, you will be cursed, right? Boom. They're essentially telling you, nah, God, if you break the laws, you blessed, and if you keep the laws, you're cursed. That's essentially their argument. They calling God a liar, right? And then we came into slavery. We got into slavery by breaking the laws. How we get out of slavery by breaking them? That makes no sense. God clearly said, if you keep the laws, you will be blessed. They say, no, you keep the laws, you will be cursed. And that's their argument. Makes no sense. And that's how you know white people taught them this. This is a plantation Christianity doctrine. This doctrine comes from Christians that ran the plantations, just like the Trinity, the universal doctrine, everybody can be saved. All that is plantation in Christianity, right? And you can tell the white people taught them this because it has no basis. The Bible teaches one thing from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. Keep the law, statutes, commandments, keep the faith in Yahweh Shai, and it's only for Israel, right? That's the basis. And with that, I want to give all honor, praise, and glory to Yahweh, and I do so in the name of Yahweh Shai, Kwame Asherala, Ashor Shabbat.
Kwame Asherala, Ashor Shabbat.
Ashar Shabbat.